This is Michael Woodward, and this is episode 214 of the Jumblethink podcast.
T-minus 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Welcome to the Jumblethink podcast, where we interview amazing entrepreneurs about their journey of turning dreams and ideas into reality. Along the way, we'll share some tips on how you can turn your own dreams and ideas into reality too. Our guest on today's episode is Phoebe Mroczek. More about Phoebe in a moment. Whether you're new to the Jumblethink podcast or you're a long-time listener, I want to encourage you to head on over to wherever you listen to podcasts and subscribe to the Jumblethink podcast. For iTunes, jumblethink.com/iTunes. For Spotify, jumblethink.com/Spotify. While you're there, leave us a rating and review. Let others know what you think of the podcast too. Now let's jump into today's episode. Hey there, welcome to the Jumblethink podcast. My name is Michael Woodward. I am your host. We have an incredible episode lined up for you today. Before we get going, I want to update you on some exciting things happening here at Jumblethink. Not only are we a podcast, but now you can find us on radio stations throughout the country, both on your AM and FM dials. In the next couple days, we'll be launching a campaign to let you know where you can find us in your local market. Today's podcast is being sponsored by our friends over at Mighty Travels. Swing on over to mightytravels.com/jumblethink to learn more about how they can help you save on your travel needs. Our episode is also sponsored by OpportunityInChina.com. They help both students and teachers connect with great opportunities to learn and teach abroad. You can find them at OpportunityInChina.com. Well, happy Friday, everyone. We are changing it up this Friday. Fridays are always our topical episodes where we talk about strategies to turn your dreams and ideas into reality. We're going to continue doing those on most Fridays, but we've been wanting to try something for a while. If you know me, if you know Jumblethink, you know that we are big fans of what we call micro experiments. These are small little changes and shifts you can try out. You can get feedback and you can evolve your business rapidly. Well, the micro experiment for us today is something we're calling Friends Friday. This is where we have personal friends of mine come on. These are experts in their space. It could be around marketing, startup strategies, finance. It could be about anything, and we're going to bring them on. We're going to have fun conversations. It's going to be a little bit more relaxed, but a great time nonetheless. Today's guest is one of those guests. Her name is Phoebe Mroczek. We met her in Austin at New Media Summit. Not only is she an expert in marketing, personal branding, and funnel creation, she is also the host of a killer podcast called Unbecoming, and she is launching a couple more podcasts with some great people. There's exciting things happening for her. I've wanted her on the podcast for the last several months, and we just finally had the opportunity to have her on for today's episode. So let's jump into the conversation we had with our friend Phoebe Mroczek. Phoebe, thanks for being on.
Thank you so much for having me. We've been talking about this for a while, so I'm excited to be here and have a conversation with you.
Yeah. I met Phoebe at New Media Summit back in September of 2018. We connected on the last, next to last day. A bunch of us went out and had dinner. That were the icons. We basically I don't even know what to consider us really. Speakers, panelists, different things like that. So a bunch of us went to grab dinner. I got to meet Phoebe and Joseph Warren, and we all hung out, and it was a lot of fun. So it's good to have this conversation with you and go a little bit deeper into the conversation.
Totally. Well, thank you for making the exception. I know you don't take coaches, and I feel very honored to be in this segment.
I always start these episodes finding out the backstory, the why and how you became an entrepreneur, when there are so many other paths to take. Because your career, your college career, was one filled with sports and activity. And so when in the world and how did you go, maybe entrepreneurship's the right path for me?
Well, to be honest, I think my journey, my entrepreneurial journey, kind of started when I was little. I had a stationery stand, I had a rock stand, I had a scrunchie making business in 5th grade. You know, I had all of these things that I just knew that I was I could sell something that I believed in, whether that be stationery or when I turned 19 and quit college soccer, I saw people selling makeup and I thought, you
Wow.
can, I went to this lady's house and she had this beautiful house, a beautiful family, all of these things that I thought in my life were really important at that point. And I just said, you did this by selling makeup? I like makeup. I think I can sell this. And I got into it and immediately changed my major from education to business. And I was like, you know what? I think I can do this. I think turns out I'm good at selling makeup. I think it's because I'm good at selling things that I'm really passionate about, things that I really love and I feel like everybody should have. And at 19, I was really bold. I was a bold entrepreneur just, because I didn't know the rules and I didn't know what you were allowed
Right.
to do or what you weren't allowed to do. So that's
Yeah.
really where I think my entrepreneurial adventure began.
Well, and I think that that's one of the distinctions between a person that runs a business and a person who's an entrepreneur is that uh, they a lot of the times that the entrepreneurs that make it, the ones that are recognized and have the big names and impact so many people, most of them didn't follow the rules of business. They didn't follow the how tos and the shoulds. They just kind of said, I see a direction I want to go in. I see something I want to create, and I have a passion for this, so I'm going to go for it.
Mm-hmm.
And it sounds like that's kind of your story too, in that yeah, you went to school for business, but you went into it with kind of a naiveness of saying, I'm just going to go do it, not knowing what the rules of engagement typically are for business.
Totally. I mean, that was absolutely the truth. And so many people, when I quit soccer, which had been my life up until that point, my mom specifically said to me, she's like, please don't do anything. Just study. Take this time to really explore what it is to be in college. And then, I called her. I was like, I think I'm going to start a Mary Kay business. And she goes, please don't. And I was like, well, I already did. So, and
Too late.
exactly. And I was like, so that's not going to happen. But it kind of chose me. And I think that's been the story of my career, really, is just going after things that I think might be really fun and might lead somewhere or might lead nowhere. But ultimately, they've led me to here. So I think it's been a series of great decisions and a series of really hard lessons, but all fun along the way, I guess.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that you said at New Media Summit, it was, I think, the first thing. I don't remember if you were on one of the panels and you said it and that, or if you said it. They had you do a pitch at one point to show how pitches are done, and you said something that's always stuck with me about you, and that was that for so long in your family, you knew your identity was in sports.
Mm-hmm.
You had a sister that was known for this, and your parents, and all of that kind of thing. And each of you had your spot, and you found your affirmation and your identity in that identity of sports. Talk to us about reemerging and saying, maybe I'm more than that. Maybe there's more to my story than just being the athlete, being the soccer player.
Yeah, so that's amazing that you remember that. So thank you. And when, as I said, like my life up until that point had all been sports, and that had been my role in the family. And being from a big family, I'm one of 6 kids, and also a very high performing, really intelligent family, which I'm very grateful for, but at the same time felt like a lot of pressure. And that, especially emerging from the athlete, quitting was really difficult. It put me into a tailspin of like, what am I actually doing? Is this the right thing? I have no idea. But it was the first decision I had ever made just for me. And
Wow.
it was so hard. I mean, I'm even getting chills thinking about it because I can go back to that moment so clearly when I actually said the words, I'm going to quit. And my coach just looked at me and he's like, I've never said this to anybody, but you're always welcome to come back anytime. And it was because we had such a great relationship and he liked me and respected me, and I the same for him. But I just knew that this was a decision that I couldn't listen to anybody else. And I had never done that up until that point. I had always gone along with everybody's expectations, and I am supposed to play soccer in college, and then I'm going to go on and become a professional soccer player. And that was my goal. And I had attached, as you said, my identity to that. And so when I made that decision, it was a real floundering of who am I? What am I doing? I don't know, what's my 5-year plan? And especially in college, everyone's talking about, so many people take the traditional route, right? Of
Yeah.
all of these
Yeah.
things, you choose your major and then you become that. That's what all my siblings have done. And so for me, I was like, well, I guess I'm going to go into finance. I don't know. I don't really know. But I think the biggest thing for me, and I went into hedge funds into New York, and which was like completely the wrong direction. I mean, it was fine direction, but at the time, knowing myself now, I'm like, that was a terrible direction. But I felt like there was this kind of there's always been a curiosity about me of, all right, well, if I don't have a 10-year plan, what's the next right step? And that was what I just kept focusing on, was what's the next right step? What sounds like fun? And so Mary Kay was that. And then I stepped out and was this adventurer and traveler. And that I went from the athletic box to the entrepreneurial Mary Kay box to the adventure box. And I didn't know that you could take steps into a bunch of different boxes. So that was it was a really, really hard time for me at that point.
I love that you mentioned curiosity, because curiosity is such a powerful tool in the journey of making dreams and ideas reality. And that's, of course, what our podcast is all about. You said that it's been a difficult journey at times. You were just mentioning that as you wrapped up your last little bit there. How has it been difficult, and how do you overcome those moments of, what am I doing here? What's going on? I'm feeling discontent, or I'm feeling like things aren't working, and you have to navigate a pivot towards a new future. How do you navigate that tension?
Well, I think the first thing is I've been a very competitive person, right? As an athlete, you're always competing for the scoreboard. It's not about the journey. It's about the outcome, right? It's about the score. And so you are constantly competing with everybody else. And that's been the biggest, hardest, most exciting thing that I've had to overcome. And sometimes, I still dip into that now, where I compare myself to other people, and you see everyone else on this track that looks like, oh, well, she just knew what the next step was and she just went and did it, and you're like, well,
Right.
I'm supposed to know that. And I don't know that. And so I have struggled, for as long as I can remember, with the like, well, maybe I don't know what I'm doing. And that's always been you just don't know what you're doing. You don't know what you're doing. And that is not helpful. So looking at things that actually serve me and saying, what would be fun? And so my 3 questions are always, what would be fun? What would be easy? And what would be honest? And those have only really arisen in the last 3 years, maybe, that I've decided that rather than chasing the next big thing, it just has to be the next right thing for right now. And that can change, and giving myself permission to change and to pivot, as you said. But throughout that process, it's just managing my own self-talk. And I think the biggest enemy that I've had in this entire process, and I think anyone listening can probably relate to this, that our biggest enemy is ourself, right? It's just that like constant nagging in your head. And to be really honest, when I was 28, I remember having a conversation with one of my friends, and I was like, wait, you have that voice too? He was like, I think everybody has that. I was like, oh, do they? Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And it took me 28 years to figure out that I wasn't the only one that thought I wasn't good at anything, and that thought, that I was scatterbrained because I kept changing my mind. But really, I love to start things. I'm not necessarily a finisher, but that's great. And there's a role for that. There's somebody that there is a place for people like that, but I just hadn't owned it. And I always thought I had to be a certain way. And then just releasing that and being like, well, today I'm going to be this. Great. Let's get through today. So I think it's just been breaking it into bite-sized pieces and just choosing the next right step, as opposed to these long visions, which do not work for me. And that's been, I guess, the stepping blocks to getting to where I feel really comfortable most days.
Most days. Of course.
Yeah. But I think also like being really honest, right? Like there's so many people, and I think that honesty is the realness of business, the realness of entrepreneurship and of life and living is lacking at the moment. And I get messages all the time from my show and from things that I'm saying and doing online and writing. I love to write on my Instagram, and people are like, thank you for being so honest and so courageous. I'm like, is that not what's happening? Okay, I'm just sharing what's going on for me. And I don't feel like I deserve to be on a pedestal. I don't think anybody does. And I think we put people on those because we don't know what else to do. But it doesn't help anybody. And just being honest is the best way that I know how to share what's going on over here with me.
Yeah. And I think I definitely agree with that. I was reading through some Facebook posts yesterday from some people we both know, and they were making a hero out of somebody because of some things that they'd done and some things that they approached. And I think that there's a place to definitely appreciate and honor the victories others have had and celebrate in that. But they were going, oh, this is the guy I've got to listen to because he's going to solve all of my problems.
Mm-hmm.
He's like my new hero. And I think the problem in that is that you're not that person. And when you start putting on the persona, which is, I think what you're alluding to here is like so many of us are curating our content, curating our message, curating our lives to reflect what we want others to perceive. And it's just not that honesty and transparency. And so they are taking on the persona of this guy who is doing great things and saying, I've got to measure up to that. And now they've just set themselves up to fail because they're not that guy.
Mm-hmm.
They're not on that journey. They're not created in the same way. They're not bent the same way in their thinking and their way of approaching. And they lose that authenticity by trying to become a caricature of what somebody else is and becoming that.
Absolutely. And I can speak so clearly to that because I've been there. I think we all have, but I
Yeah.
know there was a moment where I was at this conference and this lady came up to me. She's like, wait, we had been having this 10-minute conversation, 20-minute conversation. She's like, wait, you're Phoebe from, and then my other brand was Make Up Your Marketing. And I was like, yeah. And she goes, oh my God, you're nothing like I expected. And
Yeah.
I remember that it was just confusion and kind of embarrassment, being like, well, am I better or worse than you thought, and having that conversation.
Yeah.
But it was this weird, awkward. And that was the moment that I decided that I needed to take a look at my, branding and the things that I was doing in my business as a reflection and extension of who I am. And it wasn't, right? I was trying to be everybody else. And they're all taken. That's the expression. And so, I might as well just get really good at me, right? I'm an expert in myself. That is, and
Yeah.
some days I'm not, right? And some days I have no idea what I'm doing. And I think appreciating that part of the journey is so important. And so I know that I watch you online and you're incredibly honest about what you're doing and how, just in your interviews, what you express and what you convey in your own message is really cool. And I think that those are the people that I'm looking at for inspiration, not to become them, right? To like put on this, weird, I don't know. I was about to say like in those crazy, creepy movies when you take off somebody's face and you put it on your own, like that is not what you're going to be. But if you just, use those for get inspired by people. I get so inspired by people and what they're doing. And half the time it's like they just went and did the thing, right? It's not that they were perfect. And if you're, the saying, if you're not embarrassed by the first thing you put out, then you started too late. I'm mortified by everything that I've ever put out. It's like, oh God. But it was the first step in the right direction.
That's so good. Speaking of the whole identity thing, and we've talked about this quite a bit about the importance of identity, how it's a foundation for everything else you do. I want to pivot here and talk a little bit about what you actually do. And you have a killer podcast called Unbecoming, which I think is very a great title, but it also is a great definition of what we're talking about here. It's like unwinding all of the expectation that people put on us and we put on ourselves and we take on from others around us. Tell us about your podcast and who it's for and what's it about.
Yeah, so I heard the quote by Paulo Coelho, who wrote The Alchemist, and it says, maybe the journey isn't so much about becoming anything. Maybe it's actually about unbecoming everything that isn't really you so you can be who you were meant to be in the first place. And when I heard that, I was like, that is me. Like in a nutshell, that is me. And so the term unbecoming, and then it's also unbecoming of a woman, of an entrepreneur, of a business owner, of a podcaster, to talk about some of the things that I want to talk about and the people I want to talk about that with. And I just knew that from everything, the constant in my life was this questioning, who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? This big elusive purpose thing that I'm supposed to have by now. And I didn't have that. And I'm like, whoa, and you have glimpses of it. And so I was just really struggling. And when I heard that, I was like, that is everything that I do in my life, right? It's this unraveling in the last couple
Wow.
years, is just like questioning everything. Is this something that I chose, or is this something that was given to me? How do I put that aside? Right? How can I
Yeah.
unpack that and look at it and examine it and decide? I talk to my clients about, it's like dumping your purse out on the table and intentionally choosing what to put back in your bag. And I think there is so much magic in that when you actually dump it out and see what are we working with here, and the concept
Yeah.
of identity, as you said, we've both, we've spoken about that at length off the mic. And I think it's such an
Yeah.
important conversation. And so just in my podcast, I knew that I wanted to, right, inspire a new type of conversation, something that was really honest and refreshing and new, and something that people, I felt like they could actually take away little tidbits from people and from myself. A lot of them have been solo shows, and it's been my own unbecoming in the process, right? Showing up, being consistent, and being consistently honest, which episode number 4 is called I Am a Liar, because I realized I
Mm.
lied so much growing up, that just honesty wasn't a value in our family, really. It was,
Wow.
which, I always feel so bad saying, because I'm sure maybe it was, but in my experience of my upbringing, it wasn't the most important
Yeah.
thing. It was being
Wow.
perfect, right? Being the best, actually, not even being perfect, being the best at everything. And so if that meant you had to tell a little white lie so that you looked like you were the best, then that was the most important thing. So I
Wow.
knew that on my show, I wanted to be really real and honest and having those conversations about the who behind the business. Everyone talks about the strategies and, finding your why. And I was like, what about the who? Because for me,
Yeah.
that's the most important piece of everything that people are missing out on, especially entrepreneurs, because it's so hard when everything feels up in the air to find where to land. And when you know where you land,
Yeah.
you know where you can go. So that's
Yeah.
the concept.
So good. I love that. Beyond the podcast, you have a new podcast coming out about Austin. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I just moved to Austin a couple weeks ago, and when I got here, I was looking for somewhere that I could connect with people and that I could find out what was going on here. And there's so many things that you hear and people assume that you already know. And again, to follow one of my recent experiments in my life, I live my life as a set of experiments. And so one of them is that I just am playing around with my values and how do I align my values with my work. And it sounds like such a simple concept, but it's more than that. It's actually getting into your habits and creating work from those habits. So anyway, my 3 values at the moment, and I think that they're always changing, ever changing, and they are travel and adventure, which is always going to be a value of mine, I think, connection and learning. And when I just realized that those 3 things aligned in a way that really created a local experience, that's when the idea, the concept of this new podcast was born. And I thought, what better way than I already know the podcasting space. I know how to do it, but I've never done it on a local level to help people that live in Austin connect and ask the questions. I'm not afraid to look dumb. I'm not afraid to ask the tough questions of the people that, are all knowing about breakfast tacos. I don't know. I don't really get the concept, but I want to know. And so if I can
Yeah.
put myself out there in a way that helps other people and aligns with my values, I'm so excited about it. I can't even tell you, or but
Yeah.
I'm very, very excited about it.
Yeah, it's super cool. And I know that we've talked about some of the ideas you've had, and those will be seen as you release episodes and as you experiment with that and find your voice and tempo into that. But you have a bigger picture with that podcast. Do you want to take it to even a further level? Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I want to take it to, just beyond the podcast, really connecting in person. So bringing people together, doing live recordings, which, to be completely honest, scares the crap out of me. I'm actually kind of nervous about that because I like to, I record in my recording studio, aka my closet with great acoustics. And so it makes me nervous to be doing that, even though I speak all the time, but to be speaking on a podcast that's live with other people and their feedback, and you never know what people are going to say or ask or do. But that's something that's really exciting to me. And then to branch out and actually do it in other cities and help other people, maybe even, I'm looking at the potential of kind of franchising it and getting other cities and hiring other people to take on the format and to take it on as their own voice. And if I can get the right people in the right places, I just feel the community that we can build is going to be really exciting and really tight knit. And that's what I'm about, is building a community, building something that people feel like they belong for who they are and not for what they do or anything. So it stretches beyond just entrepreneurship, stretches beyond, any kind of, the, I guess, parameters that we put on different jobs, different roles, marital status, anything like that. It transcends all of that. So just human to human, really connecting on a deeper level.
I want to kind of, we're going to go deeper into some of the other things you're doing in segment 2. But as we wrap up this segment, I always like to ask, how do you find purpose in what you're doing?
That's a great question. What I do is to be honest, I don't put as much emphasis on purpose, right? I talk a lot about seasons of purpose. And so when I find a purpose in my life, it's really, I look at it first of, what do I want out of life? How do I want to show up? How do I want to create? What do I want to be remembered for? Who do I want to be remembered by? Those are questions that I'm asking myself. And then how do those align with my values? And so from all of those things, I realize that there is a greater purpose in what I'm doing because it stretches beyond myself. And if I seem to be stuck in that, I realize that I'm making it all about me and that it's actually not about me at all. It's about other people and it's about creating connection. That is what I'm all about. So how do I create connection in whatever I'm doing? How do I add value to a situation that might not have as much value, or people might not have received as much value in the past? So that's constantly what I'm looking for. I don't put as much, because I feel a lot of pressure around the word purpose, but that's how I find purpose in what I'm doing.
For you, what is one challenge you're currently working to overcome in your own business?
I think there are a set of challenges that I'm working to overcome. It's always going to be how do I prioritize? How do I, what's the most important thing that I'm working on? And so that is a constant. Actually, I was just on a plane yesterday and thinking about, okay, I have a bunch of things on my plate right now. I've taken on, I tend to go in these phases of, today I'm a yes girl and I'm saying yes to everything and all these opportunities, especially in Austin, and I'm new. And then it actually gets down to doing the work. And then I just have too many things. So it's this constant, and I don't really believe in balance. I think it's this prioritization of things that are important to me. And so what comes first? That's always going to be a challenge for me because I like all the things that I'm doing. So I don't like to prioritize, but that's always a challenge in my business, is to how to prioritize. What am I prioritizing? Where am I spending my most valuable waking hours? And what am I doing? And how am I having a life that feels really exciting and good at the same time? How do those things meld into one? And that I think I'm pretty decent at, but the challenge is always going to be in prioritizing what's most important.
So for you, what's the next big goal you have for you and your business?
My big thing right now is just I'm in a state or a season of visibility, and that is something that I'm really excited about. I feel like I've sort of been in this hibernation phase, figuring all these pieces out and changing my business and getting rid of some things and some people, and then moving into this place of, right now I've emerged and I feel really excited for what's to come. And so my big goals, I think, are more around that, the habits, the consistency, the commitments that I have to what's most important, which is getting out and connecting with people, talking about this unbecoming process. How does that manifest itself into our life and into our business in order to create a life that we're proud of, that we're excited by? And I talk about all the time how I am just an advocate for really living, right? How do you really live your life? And I think we have these we get stuck in these ruts of what does this look like? Or, and I think that a lot of times it takes a catastrophe to pull ourselves out of any kind of rut that we're in. And then all of a sudden we jump on this bandwagon because someone gets sick or we get sick or somebody dies. And, and I want to stop people, intercept them before they get to that phase. So that's what's pushing me. That's what's driving me. So my big goals are really just around staying visible, right? And how do I consistently stay visible so that I can help people That's always going to be my focus, is helping one person after one person after one person.
We'll be right back with Phoebe for our second segment as we go deeper into this conversation, talk more about adventures and building business and community and so much more. One of our passions at Jumblethink is to help you turn your dreams and ideas into reality. We have some free guides to help you on that journey, including the Dreamer's Guide to Micro Experiments. All you need to do is head on over to jumblethink.com/guides to download your free guide and start the journey of using that tool to help you turn your dreams and ideas into reality. So head on over, jumblethink.com/guides, to download your free guides. We want to take a moment and thank our sponsors for today's episode, OpportunityInChina.com and Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more from our friends over at OpportunityInChina.com. Have you been looking for a way to change your career or social prospects? Do you see the world around you changing and haven't quite figured out what path you should take? You are not alone in seeking opportunity. Visit OpportunityInChina.com for access to scholarships to attend university in China, or if you have a bachelor's degree already, OpportunityInChina.com provides access to jobs in the educational sector all across China. Now, working in China is not only often well paid, but it will place you among 1/5 of the world's population, boosting your social network and bringing you more deeply into the story of globalization, ultimately opening up doors you never knew existed. So seize your opportunity now. Visit their website for more information at OpportunityInChina.com. We also want to thank our sponsors and our friends over at Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more from them. I don't know about you, but I love to travel. I just don't like looking through all the websites to find the right fares to the right locations that I want to travel to. Well, our friends over at mightytravels.com are helping you get better rates to the places you want to travel, often saving up to $190 per ticket. You should check out mightytravels.com/jumblethink to learn more about how you can use their service to get the right trips booked for you at incredible rates. So swing on over, check it out, mightytravels.com/jumblethink. Now let's jump into the conversation we had with our friend Phoebe Mroczek. We are back with Phoebe Mroczek, and we're going deeper into the conversation. Before we get rolling, how can people find and connect with you?
I am very accessible on social media. So first you can start off by listening to the podcast. So unbecomingpodcast.com/iTunes, basically search. If you are listening to this, you know where to find podcasts. So Unbecoming is the name of that. And then Instagram is where I play most. So I'm sure you'll have the links there, but just over on Instagram, it's Phoebe Mroczek, really easy to find. And I am active on there every day. You know that. I'm always, I'm all over it. I love it.
Yeah, it's easy to find, hard to spell, Mroczek. So it's Mroczek, right?
That's right. And you said it correctly both times, which I'm very impressed by. That never happens.
Well, all of those links are in the episode notes. And if you're listening on iTunes, it's down below. If you're listening on Spotify, I have no idea where it is. So you can go check it out there. All right. So I want to go deeper into this conversation. We talked a little bit about your podcast, but you are more than just a podcaster, obviously. So what are some of the other things you're working on and doing?
So I am a business coach, and that has had a bunch of different evolutions. So I started off in Facebook ads and launch strategies and funnels, and then moved into really after this conversation that I spoke about where I talked to that lady and she was like, "You are nothing like I thought." I just looked into, and that's when I really started to research personal branding. And from the personal branding, it was like, well, I thought, and I don't know if I'm the only one who thought this, but I assumed, or I thought that personal branding was all about the logos and the colors and the websites. And I realized that it's so much more than that. And in that research, I thought, well, if I didn't know that, and I would consider myself a decently, intelligent human being, I'm sure there are other people out there who don't know that. And so I've been sharing on that and training. And so what I'm doing right now is I'm helping my clients figure out the branding piece, the positioning piece, which it comes before the branding. That's super important. And in the positioning and that's where people miss it, right? If you're stuck or frustrated or, frustrated with the lack of growth in your business, it's 99% of the time, it's because you are incorrect in your positioning. So really helping people figure out where, why they're unique. And that goes back to the who piece, right? And so helping people figure that out and then getting into, okay, now that we've got the who, then we can get the why, then we get the what, and then the how. So really full circle, if you're looking to make a pivot, that's what I'm helping people do. But personal branding, people come to me all the time for websites and logos and my opinion on their marketing strategy. And I'm like, right, but when I ask them the really hard questions, they don't have answers for those. And that's where the meat is. That's where all of your marketing comes from, is from that who piece, right? Who are you? Who are they? How do those pieces intersect? And so from a business standpoint, that's what I'm helping people do. And that can be, whatever the marketing channel is, if that is through social media, if that is through your website, your blog, your podcast, I'm normally helping coaches and course creators and consultants. That's who I'm working with.
Super, super cool. I, of course, have heard some of the stories that you have about adventure. And I think that adventure is something, honestly, that we've lost track of. And it's kind of funny because being on this podcast, I talk to a lot of people globally too. I talk to guests that have been out of Europe and out of Australia, out of Asia. And what's interesting to me is one of the things that they always say that is a marker of America is our sense of adventure, our sense of stepping into the unknown, the risk, and being that we're a little bit more willing to take that step. And yet we're seeing entrepreneurship in America, the numbers drop. We're seeing small businesses starting to become less and less. And there's this cultural shift going on right now. Somewhere in this mix, we've lost our sense of adventure and we've settled for safe. Tell us a little bit about why adventure is so important to you.
Oh, just as you were talking, I was just like nodding my head. I'm like, this is, you're right on the mark. And it's just so frustrating for me to see, because adventure has been when you look back at your life, this is a lot of the work I do, is like looking back at your life and seeing what has been a constant in your life. And travel and adventure have always been a constant since I became an adult. And the reason that it's so important to me is because and I didn't realize this at the time, I just thought it was going to be fun and I had no idea, and I wanted to push myself. But I don't think that's why I first started. I studied abroad 3 times. And in those study abroads, it opened my eyes to a whole new world out there that was way bigger than anything that I ever imagined. And I was interacting with the most interesting people that in little pockets of the world that I would never have access to. And so I remember the conversations that I'm having in Egypt with this little girl who's sweeping the sidewalk with her little broom, and I can visualize her face. But then I also have these awesome experiences. I lived in China for 3 years, and I was supposed to be there for 3 months, for a 3-month contract with the UN. And I ended up staying for 3 years because I couldn't figure it out. And I still didn't figure it out. After 3 years, I had no idea. I was like back at the start, but I was like, all right, it's time to move on. And I think that's my brain, the curiosity, also the figuring it out. And so I have a rule for myself that I'll never leave a place that I live until I have a 10-day itinerary for somewhere. So I ended up staying a little bit extra time in Berlin because I was living there, and I was like, what? I could probably create a week long, but I couldn't create a 10-day. So I stayed a little bit longer. But that was because I love just how it forces you out of your comfort zone. And then, as I alluded to before, I thrive in situations where I don't know the rules. And so in China, I didn't actually know the rules. There kind of aren't any rules. And when you're traveling, there are 0 rules. And that's the most fun because you get to play and you get to have fun. And I've done these 2 road trips in the last 2 years, one around Scotland and one around Ireland. And my life is like a set of metaphors and analogies for life and for business. And that is like what appears to me. I feel super connected. I feel really just in my skin. I'm very present. I think that's probably the biggest piece of it, is being really present and just thinking outside the box. So I think entrepreneurship and adventure go hand in hand, but people think that entrepreneurs are these big risk takers. And I actually just don't agree with that, because entrepreneurs are very calculated. We take risks, but after we've analyzed everything, as opposed to being in a real adventure and you don't know what's around the next corner. It's really cool. So I think entrepreneurs could stand to be a little bit more adventurous, and adventurous people probably would thrive in an entrepreneurial setting. So they go hand in hand. And that is why I think I've been successful at both. I would say I really like both, and I can't separate one from the other because they just work so well in tandem.
For you, well, okay, so for us at the podcast here, we're all about ideas and dreams and how to turn them into reality. For many people listening, when they're listening to the podcast, they're going, that's awesome. I want to be chasing those dreams and ideas and stepping into the big picture. And yet I have fear. I have obstacles I have to overcome. I have whatever it is that is the barrier into becoming an entrepreneur. And so we always talk about micro experiments and how using small steps is a big way to move forward. And so you don't have to make the big leap all at once. Adventure can be a great tool for getting those idea muscles working, to think creatively, coming up with solutions to problems on the go. How can people start stepping into a lifestyle that incorporates more adventure into their lifestyle?
Oh, this is such a good question, and I could go on and on for days about this. So I promise to keep it short. But one of the things, adventure is what you believe it is, right? You get to dictate what adventure means to you. And even when I just moved from San Francisco, and so I was challenging myself for local experiments, and what is adventure right now, today? So I have something in my life. I'm toying around. One of my experiments right now is toying around with, before 9 a.m., I have to have 3 wins. And those wins have to be around, right? And one of them can be making my bed. That's a win for me. But before 9 a.m., because I want to start my day in the same way I want to finish my day, which is as a winner, or, somebody who feels really great. And so I don't believe in a structure, or I don't not believe in it. It just doesn't work for me, a structured morning routine. I have a bunch of things that I really enjoy doing, and I just pick 3 out and I do them. And so those 3 things are always going to be around my values. So adventure, connection, and learning. And so one of the, in terms of adventure, one of them is a cold shower. Is that enjoyable? Is it comfortable? No, but that's the point, is it's pushing me out of my comfort zone. It feels like an adventure because it's that rush. It's also walking around the building a different way, or going to a different coffee shop, trying something new. And so that's how I'm constantly pushing myself a little bit. I'm moving all the time. I travel a lot, but when I'm here in one place on the ground, wanting to challenge myself and make myself a little uncomfortable, maybe I just challenge myself to sit somewhere that I don't normally sit, or choose something different off the menu. There's so many different things that people assume. I get all the time, well, it would be nice to be able to travel, but I have kids, or but I have this, but I have that. And you're always going to have a reason for an excuse, right? You're always going to have an excuse your whole life. And I think one of the biggest things that I see a lot of parents do is they use their kids as an excuse, not the reason. And so if you use your kids as the reason that you get to do something, right? You don't have to do it. You get to do this. And your kids are learning by example. I love kids. I don't have any of my own yet. I will one day. I do have nephews that I adore, but I see the way that they watch me. Even this is a great example. I was just in Florida last week, and jumping into the pool, and they're like, and my little 3-year-old nephew says, "It's going to be cold. Aren't you scared?" And I said, "It's going to be really uncomfortable." Yeah, but that's what you do. That's what life's about, and just reiterating to them that, and again, the ripple effect, you don't even notice the ripple effect that could have on your friends, your parents, your spouse. When you take that leap, whatever that looks like, and you challenge yourself, and then celebrate yourself and get proud of yourself. How often do we say to ourselves, "I'm really proud of myself for something"? So rarely. And so I'm constantly looking at things that, what could I be proud of myself for today? Yeah, I made my bed. That's a win. I walked a different way to the coffee shop. That's a win. Awesome. So I agree that these micro experiments, micro adventures can't have a place in our life and should take up more space than we even allow them to.
Well, I can hear some of the people listening right now, and they're saying, "Yeah, that sounds good." And I want to give that to my kids, or I want to go make my life more adventurous, but that just seems like a big leap. What's a small thing that they can do right now to begin to create a lifestyle of adventure? Something very, very small that they could do.
Yeah, so just start writing some things out. What I would do is set a timer. So when I look at what would be adventurous today, right? If you had to do something in the next 10 minutes, what would that be? It wouldn't be booking a flight to Bali. It might be, you know, it might be making a smaller choice in the direction of what you say you value. So if you value connection, maybe this adventurous piece would be, okay, you're going to pick your kid up on time, and maybe you're just going to sit in the parking lot and draw funny faces on a piece of paper. Just do something different. So set a
Okay.
timer for 5 minutes and brainstorm in the next 10 minutes. Set a timer for whatever, just a couple minutes, and write out all these things that you could do, that you want to do, that you've always wanted to do just in your surrounding area, right? In your neighborhood. You really want to attend a town hall meeting. I mean, that sounds like death to me, but if that's your thing, then just set it, like, make time for it, right? So I like to say a lot is that we can tell what you value, or I can tell what you value by looking at your bank account and your calendar, because
Yeah.
that's where you put your money and where you put your time. And if
Yeah.
you look at that and it's not in alignment with what you say you value, then make some changes. Don't be afraid to schedule it. If it's not scheduled, it's not going to happen. So even just booking yourself out 5 minutes to sit quietly, if you can't meditate or you can't make time for it, just sit in your car, right? Right before, just set it for 2 minutes before you go into work or before you start your day. Sit there quietly for 2 minutes. Super simple. I am all about making really small incremental changes and building the habit, which then, I don't go after the goals anymore. I go after the habits. So those are always going to be my priorities. But does that help? Do you think that's actionable?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. All right. Before we pivot in this conversation, you've mentioned some places that you lived and traveled to. Give us the list.
So I've traveled now to 64 countries on 6 continents. So I bought a one-way ticket to Taiwan right out of, as I was working at the hedge fund, and realized it was not for me. Booked a one-way ticket to Taiwan because I didn't know anyone who had ever lived there. And I thought, I've never been there and I don't know anyone who has. So let me go there. And then I did a big traveling adventure excursion. So I lived in Taiwan for a year, and then got a job at the UN in Beijing, China, lived there for 3 years, and then did a motorcycle trip through Europe, settled in London for a couple months, and then lived in Berlin for about a year and a half, and then San Francisco, and now Austin.
Wow. Wow. Favorite place out of all those?
Oh, I mean, for what? I did just so many places I love. I mean, Bali and Ireland, Scotland are like places that I feel really, really connected and really grounded. I mean, the food in Italy. I lived there. I studied abroad in Florence. So that holds a very special place in my heart. I mean, Tanzania, Namibia was probably my favorite place in Africa. Egypt. Yeah. I have a lot of
The
places.
list goes on.
It does go on. How much time do you have?
Well, as we pivot here, I want to talk a little bit about community. You are very connected on social media, especially Instagram, to the world, but we have lost the art of connection in so many spaces. And the more connected we become digitally, it seems like the more we're lacking connection in the everyday face to face. So how are you navigating for you in the podcast and the other business stuff you're working on to build a community in which you are truly engaged and not just a fly on the wall in the daily conversations online?
I think this is such an important topic, and I don't think there just aren't enough people talking about it. This element or this idea of loneliness, and it's something that really runs so deep in all of us, but especially I can speak for myself because I've always felt like I didn't really belong and something was different about me or different about everybody else, and I couldn't quite figure out what it was. And so I have really made it a goal, a commitment of mine to let everybody in, right? To operate under the assumption that everybody is going through what I am going through. And that can be loneliness. That can also be excitement for what's to come, for the new podcast, for new projects, all this really cool stuff. But whatever your situation is, I want you in my community because there's something that you're going through. And I think a lot of times what was happening with me was I was getting lost in the details of, okay, I have one, my father passed away. And so how many people can relate to that? Not that many, right? How many people can relate to traveling all over the place? Not that many. But what really connects people is what happens at the core emotions of heartbreak, of loss, of loneliness, of love, of, just this overwhelming sense of confidence and, all of these little things that are seemingly little things, but that's really where people connect. So I'm not talking as much. I think I attract people with the details, but what actually connects us as a community, as humans to each other is really in the core of who we are and asking ourselves these questions, especially as women, and men too. It's like, are we a mother? Are we, a mother, a father, a sister, a brother? Who are we and how are we creating this identity outside of that? And so as I continue to open up as a coach, as a podcaster, as a community leader, my connections only can go as deep as I've been willing to go with myself. And so I'm constantly stretching myself. I'm constantly asking myself hard questions so that I know how deep I can go with my relationships. And so just modeling that by example and trying to be really honest about when I mess up and also when I do really well and I'm really proud of myself. So allowing that connection to unfold organically. I don't need 1 million followers. That's not, maybe one day, but that's not my goal, right? My goal is to engage with the people who are engaged with me. So I'm asking questions. I'm, writing people on little wins that they have. And when they message me, I don't just, send a 1-word reply or never reply. I really try hard to engage with people because I know what it feels like when you feel like you're the only one going through what you're going through. And I never want people to feel that. And I want to be accessible and I want people to know that I'm here and that I will listen and, that I will be a support because I probably have been through something similar. And if I haven't, then I have been through the core emotion that you have. So I just think it's really important. And the other quick thing I want to say is with social media, what I had this moment a couple of months ago where I was like, when I was growing up, I had a family newsletter, of course, that I ran and I charged people $5, $5 a year to get the family newsletter. But there we go. And so we would send family photos and those family photos the photos were reserved for the family. Now they're out there on the internet, right? And so we put these things up and it creates this almost fake connection. And so while I do believe that social media does connect people and if it's used in that way, but it also makes us, when we hit I do not have 5,000 friends on Facebook, but if we hit that limit and we're celebrated, I got a notification from Facebook that was celebrated for adding, 150 new friends this year or whatever it was. And I thought, why are we celebrating that? We're celebrating the quantity over the quality of our relationships. So just be really careful about, not just what you're sharing, but what the intention behind the sharing is. And are you being really honest with yourself and the relationships that you're developing?
Yeah, we always say that social media is awesome, but it is building a false intimacy without a sense of responsibility for each other. And that in that we start consuming people as data, not as human beings.
Totally.
There's a whole concept of Dunbar's number that says we can only facilitate X amount of intimate relationships at any one time, and we're overloading that. And so in that, we're not as connected because we're overloaded by data about people. It's not healthy for us to vicariously consume data on people and feel like we're close to them. So when we bump into them 10, 15, 20 years later after high school, that we know everything about them. That's just not the way it should be.
Totally. I have moments where I've said, I have a friend of mine who lives. No, I don't. I just know that person. because I followed them on social media. That's embarrassing. Or I thought
Yeah.
I had met one of my friend's husbands, and I was like, no, we have met. And he's like, no, we haven't. And I thought, oh my gosh, I just know you from social media. It's embarrassing. But one of the
Wow.
things I really admire about you specifically is the way that you take relationships offline, and you are constantly, and I just want to brag on you for a quick second, is just that you reach out to me all the time. And we had this connection at New Media Summit, and then it's like a lot of times those just fall by the wayside, and then you see each other at the next conference, and then you're catching up on the last 6 months. But you are so intentional about the way that our friendship has developed, because we constantly check in with each other, and we set up calls, and that's not convenient, right? It's not always the most convenient, but it's important. And so I wanted to recognize you, because you do a great job at really developing relationships. And as somebody who works really hard at that in my own life, I really appreciate when somebody else takes the lead on that. So thank you for that.
Oh, thanks. Yeah, it's always interesting to me. It's like if the expected response is a short email or Facebook message, then what's the next step that you can go further in that? And I was just thinking about this over the weekend. There's about 5 different people I reached out to via different streams of connection, whether it was a text message, a voicemail message, or something like that. And it always shocks me how it's surprising that people are like, why would you go the extra step? There was a study done, I forget who it was, but he recently launched this study where if somebody text messaged him or messaged him on Facebook, he would stop what he's doing and pick up his phone and actually dial the person. And he said, sometimes I would get in touch with the person. Sometimes they're like, this is awkward. Why are you calling me? And just different responses to that. And I thought that was brilliant that he just went, instead of my quick little response that may get misinterpreted based on what I'm, the quickness of my message, I'm just going to call. It's going to take me a little bit longer. And he said that a couple things happened. One, that he actually got more business because conversations of unknown things started happening outside of what would have normally happened by responding to the email or text message. And so by going to that phone call level, all of a sudden it opened up new opportunities that he didn't know existed. 2, it helped him become more responsible to the people that he was in communication to, because all of a sudden there was a new level of connection that was not typical of the typical connection. And so all of a sudden there was a more of a connection there. And the third thing is it weeded out the things that were insignificant, because if the person didn't get back to him, he realized that it wasn't really a value point to that person. And so that experiment that he did really impacted his view on connection and how he valued a much more tangible form of connection over the convenient form of connection.
I love that. That's so funny. It takes what I do to the next level. I do voice memos all the time. So
Yeah.
I send voice memos just because for me, they're easier, but also so many things get lost in translation when it comes to text messages. And I like to hear other people's voices. And the response I always get back is, whoa, well, I guess I'll send you a voice. I've never used this thing. Is this thing on? It's so funny. But that's how I like to communicate, because I want people to know, if I just if I post on your wall, happy birthday, great. So did 500 other people. I want you to know that I really genuinely want, here's what I hope for you for the next year. And so just going, taking 20 seconds, the same 20 seconds that it took you to write out a happy birthday post, I actually just sent a message, and that person listens to it. And it's so funny to me how many people are like, oh my gosh, thank you so much. I had no idea that they had this. And Instagram too. I'll send, people that respond to my live videos or my posts or anything that I'm doing on my stories, I'll send them a voice memo back, which is a new feature. And they're like, wow, thank you for taking the time. I'm like, no, thank you for paying attention and for taking the time, so it's just this like love fest back and forth until we get to the real stuff. But totally it's translated into better business. And, not that that's the sole intention, but people want connection, whatever that looks like. And if they believe that you actually care about them, then what does that say for your business, right? What does that say for as a mentor, as a coach, as a consultant, whatever you're working towards? It's that consistency. It's that showing up, that foundation that you're building from which you can jump off and say, yeah, by the way, if you know anybody, and that's not the intention, but they're
Yeah.
always going to remember you as somebody who cared. And so
Yeah.
whether that's referring somebody or whether that's, at the end of the day, I want people to, think of me and think of, wow, she really cared about me. She really saw me and understood me and valued me as a person, not a number or an email on my email list.
Absolutely. So the challenge today for all of you listening when it comes to community is take the extra step to go a little bit further to connect to the people that matter. Very simple.
I mean, I couldn't have said that better myself. That was perfect. I was like, wow, you had that written out or something. That sounded great. But yes, absolutely.
Just made it up.
Perfect. That was amazing.
Well, we will be right back with Phoebe to go into our rapid fire questions and wrap up today's episode. In the world of making ideas and dreams become a reality, community is significant to that journey. We would love to be part of your community to help you on the journey of turning your dreams and ideas into reality. So let's connect on social media. We've made it super easy. All you have to do is go to jumblethink.com/Facebook or jumblethink.com/Instagram. It will take you right to the app, right to our profile page so you can connect. Again, that's jumblethink.com/Instagram and jumblethink.com/Facebook. Let's continue this conversation and let's see how we can help you turn your dreams and ideas into reality. Now let's dive back into rapid fire questions with Phoebe Mroczek.
Et attendez. Restez calme pendant un moment.
We are back with Phoebe Mroczek to go into rapid fire questions. Phoebe, are you ready?
I think so. I hope so. Here we go. Let's do it.
All right. So first question is, as a child, what did you want to be when you grew up?
A professional soccer player and a talk show host.
What is one tip you'd give someone with a big idea and dream and they don't know where to start?
Reach out for help. Find someone who's doing what you want to do or someone who is where you want to be and find something of value that you can offer them and get, offer value first and then see what happens. Develop a relationship. That's really important.
What is one big lie about entrepreneurship you want to break?
Oh, so many. That it's all about the hustle. That is a big, like that to be a successful entrepreneur, you have to hustle 15 hours a day. That is just not true.
I agree. I hate the hustle.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny. I was recently on a podcast with friends of mine, people I think you know too, and hustle is in their name. And I went on for like 10 minutes about how I hate the hustle. I felt bad afterwards. I went, whoops.
No,
they're all about the hustle.
I don't agree with it. Right. I just don't think that it has to be hard. I think can be hard work, right? It can be uncomfortable, but it doesn't have to be hard. It doesn't have to be, the grind that everybody says it is.
Yeah. What is one change you'd like to see in the world?
I would like for people to feel more connected, more valued, and just showing more love and appreciation for each other.
What do you want your legacy to be?
Oh, that's an easy one. No, I want my legacy really to be that people felt really, just that they felt really connected, that people saw me as somebody who cared for other people, that I was somebody who went after their dreams, someone that was passionate about life, about living, about adventure, about stretching themselves and connecting with other people and really loving every moment as though it was their first, not just their last.
What inspires you?
People really, kids. Actually, I'll go with kids on this one. Kids really inspire me. I just find their curiosity, their development, their growth, the speed at which their brain is able to absorb information and spit it out is really cool. And just the way that they go after what they want and it's almost that they act first, think later, which is something I think I do a lot. It just doesn't, as an adult, there are a lot more responsibilities and more severe consequences. So I am really inspired by kids.
What is one book you think every dreamer or entrepreneur should read and why?
Untethered Soul. That's probably the
Okay.
book that I recommend the most. And I recommend that one and Conversations with God. I love those two books. And both books, I recommend that people listen to it on audio as an audiobook and read it. Not necessarily at the same time, but because the information absorbs in a different way when you're reading it and when you're listening to it.
How do you define success?
Success for me is doing cool things with cool people in cool places.
Super, super good. What is one trend you're currently excited about?
Podcasting, for sure. I love it. And I love the idea of people being more real, right? I think the trend is becoming towards like authenticity and vulnerability, but when that becomes a strategy, I don't think it's as effective. But when that just becomes part of who you are and how you show up in the world, then the strategy is the byproduct, right? The results are the byproduct of how you actually show up to deliver value and how you show up to be a contributing member of society. So that and podcasting for sure.
What is one habit you find helpful in your life as an entrepreneur?
The morning routine, the wins, the 3 wins before 9 a.m., whatever those wins look like, and just mixing those up to include, a list of things. So I have probably a list of 15 things that I can choose from in the morning. So I don't like structure, but I like having enough structure that I can be really flexible and fluid within that framework.
What is one thing you wish you would have known when you first started out?
That it's all going to work out. I think, that it's not about the quick overnight, that nobody's an overnight success. It's not about the quick growth. It's about the sustainable growth. So just keep plugging away. It's about putting in the time and refining and honing your craft as opposed to making the big bucks.
If you weren't doing what you're doing today, what do you think you'd be doing?
I would be maybe traveling probably. I don't know. I think I'm doing exactly what I want to be doing. So I would probably be paid by, maybe I'd work for like National Geographic or maybe the Washington Post like travel section and just traveling and writing about it. Working for a travel company. I don't know. But I think entrepreneurship is definitely in my blood. So I think I am doing the thing that I want to be doing.
Our final rapid fire question and our favorite question to ask on the podcast is, what is one dream you're still wanting to fulfill in your own life?
I want to write a book. I really, really want to write a book. It's always been, I actually started it when I was 20. So I have probably the first chapter, but that's going to be, it's evolved in my head, but I think just actually sitting down and putting that, pen to paper is going to be really therapeutic for me, I think. And I have a lot of things to say, but my whole life I felt like I had nothing to say. So I never wanted to put it out. And I finally feel confident and in a place where I know that my voice matters and that it can inspire even just one person. And if it does, then the book, the time that it spent to write the book is definitely worth it.
As we wrap up today's episode, we always like to leave our guests have a final thought. So what's your final thought for all of us today?
My final thought is really just to ask yourself the tough questions about, my 2 favorite questions are, what do you want to be remembered for and who do you want to be remembered by? Get those pieces in place. Figure out who you want to be in the world before you figure out what you want to do. Work on the who piece. Figure out who you are and how you want to show up in the world, what value you want to add, how you want to show up in your relationships, which relationships matter. Get all of those pieces in place because you can't build a business when the personal foundation is rocky. So get the personal foundation in place and then build a business on a solid foundation. And it sounds so cliche, but you're enough exactly the way you are. You have a message. I don't care what you think. And sometimes you doubt yourself, but getting those pieces out of the way and appreciating who you are. You are unique. You have a message. You have a story to tell, and your voice matters, and you are important.
Phoebe, thanks so much for taking time out and being on the podcast today. Really appreciate it. It's always fun to connect with friends.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for inviting me on the show, for just being such a great friend. I really appreciate what you do in the world, your idea camps, and how you inspire so many people. So I am honored to be here, really, truly, and just so grateful to be your friend. So thank you for having me.
Once again, we want to thank our friends Phoebe Mroczek for being on the podcast today, sharing her story and insights into the world of entrepreneurship. Make sure you go check out what she's doing. You can find those links in the episode notes below. We also want to thank our sponsors for today's episode, Mighty Travels and OpportunityInChina.com. Here's a little bit more from our friends over at OpportunityInChina.com.
At the dawn of the 19th century, forward-thinking people moved to the commercial centers of Europe. Moving into the 20th century, America welcomed millions into the land of freedom and opportunity. It is now the 21st century. Many of the successes and fortunes of our generations will be made in China. To learn how you can seize opportunity in China, follow the Opportunity in China podcast. The Opportunity in China podcast is available anywhere podcasts are streamed, or you can visit our website at opportunityinchina.com.
We also want to thank our friends over at Mighty Travels. Here's a little bit more about them. How much time do you spend looking for the right flight for your trip? Do you spend hours searching all of the different travel websites only to find out that once you booked your ticket, you missed out on a better price? Well, our friends over at Mighty Travels are here to help you. They want to make sure that you get notifications in real time so that you can score the best tickets at the best price, saving on average $190 per ticket. Well, they are doing cool stuff, so you want to make sure to check them out. Swing on over to mightytravels.com/jumblethink. That's mightytravels.com/jumblethink to learn more about how they can help you know when the best fares are hitting the market so you can grab them up before they're gone. I hope you've enjoyed today's episode of the Jumblethink podcast with our friends Phoebe Mroczek. As we wrap up today's episode, I want to encourage you to get out there and take an adventure. The adventure of turning your dreams and ideas into reality. It is a journey that's filled with the unknown, sometimes fear and obstacles, but nonetheless, it is incredibly powerful to have your dreams and ideas become a reality and ultimately to impact those people around you with the dreams and ideas you create. So take the steps to move into this adventure, chase those dreams, create those ideas, and change the world around you.
Les mères de famille, les enfants, peuvent également prendre un moment revitalisant. Dans quelques mois, lorsque vous aurez bien saisi la technique et que vous serez maître de votre corps, vous pourrez vous décontracter même en travaillant.